in light of this situation, he's a really good football coach. And I think a lot of coaches around the National Football League understand the situation that he's put in. Ron Rivera spoke on it yesterday and believes that he should be coaching again. That's just one coach. Then you'll see 2 and 3 and executives, and you'll see players get behind the situation. But I also look at the 2 teams that he interviewed for in the New Orleans Saints as well as the Houston Texans. There's a relationship there at the Houston Texans with Jack Easterby along with Nick Caserio. They all were in New England together. That job has not been filled yet. And so I think he is in the mix there, even though this is happening to him. And I also think if he wants to take a defensive coordinating job, there could possibly be somewhere like the Las Vegas Raiders with Josh McDaniels in that group of individuals. Just think about it. New England's connections, and the Raiders don't care about the National Football League and the other owners and what they think about any damn way, especially in light of what happened to them and the way that they feel about the John Gruden situation. So I do think he will coach again because he's a hell of a football coach and he deserves to continue to keep coaching.
Jay, if he has to take a job as a defensive coordinator, which let's be very clear, that's a demotion.
Yes.
Based on, forget about the circumstances as he describes them. Let's say we had no knowledge of the accusation or anything. He took over an Adam Gase team that was maybe the worst ever. In their first 4 games, they were outscored 163-26. That's on average a 40-6 or a 41-7 margin per game, okay? Think about that. And they won 5 of their last 9 games that season. And they won 10 games the next season and had a great winning streak to finish this season over 500. He has to take a job as a defensive coordinator?
Me personally, I wouldn't be able to swallow my pride after knowing what I was able to lead an organization to come back and then take a DC job, Key. Now, I hear what you're saying. The Raiders' opportunity seems like it's a good opportunity. That's just me, frankly. And going through this whole thing yesterday, hearing all the conversations about it, I automatically went to this place, Max, in my mind, that this is a reflection of what's happening in just corporate America in general for a lot of black and brown people who don't get the same opportunities because essentially, look, a lot of companies try to hire for diversity and there's quotas that they need to fill, but they end up giving to jobs, of people internally, right? And it's a problem that I've heard so many people, and I talked to so many people about this yesterday. It just speaks about a bigger problem that I think is within corporate America. And I don't know. I pray that Brian Flores gets a chance to coach again. Now, one can use an argument about the NFL doesn't want another Colin Kaepernick situation, which obviously would increase the probability for a guy like Brian Flores to coach again. But we know how tightly knitted this community is of NFL ownership. And I don't know how owners would view other owners that would allow a guy who has a class action lawsuit against the league, which is not really against the league, it's against the owners, right? This is against the owners, essentially. That then would allow a head coach to come into their organization and then get kind of used essentially as marketing around that.
Is there an Al Davis out there?
On the league.
Yeah, is there an Al Davis out there, Key, type who would be like, I don't care about these other dudes. I'm going to hire this dude.
There's 32 Al Davises that are out there because they're all independent of the National Football League. They can do what they want to do. It's up to them as the owners to make that decision on what they want to do with their organization and all. When
who are examples of people like that other than Al Davis?
There's 32 owners, Jay. I don't know to what degree one would step out and decide to do that. I mean, when you look at it, the Rooney family certainly has no problems. They have a head coach intact, but they have no problems. When you look at Steve Bisciotti, clearly at the Baltimore Ravens, he deals with African Americans left and right. He has no problem. Jim Irsay, but all these coaches, all of these owners that I'm speaking of have coaches that are already in place. Jim Irsay has hired 3 African-American coaches along the way. So when you start to look at it, you say to yourself, okay, it doesn't mean that Flores is going to get another job again. Well, it does mean that he could potentially get another job. We can't just look at it and assume that every owner, because they are part of an NFL group, is going to make the same decisions. This has been going on for a long time in the history of the National Football League.
Well,
somebody has to make their own mind up, and I think an owner will do that at some point in time.
Key, this has been going on for a long time in the history of the National Football League, but this is the first discrimination lawsuit against the league in its over 100-year existence. The first, and it's a class action lawsuit, which also means that there will be others that will be following suit here. It's not one person, it's others. So that's what I'm saying. There are people that are in position already, Max, but none of them have class action lawsuits against the NFL.
He would be, and in light of that, he'd be getting a second opportunity as a head coach, which are even fewer and farther between than first opportunities for black head coaches.
But Max, he's a winning head coach.
He is.
And when I speak of him potentially getting a defensive coordinating job, the question was, will he coach again? So if he wants to coach, there's opportunities to coach. Doesn't necessarily mean head coach, but if he wants to take a relationship job, as I would call it, with let's say the Raiders, that's because of Josh McDaniels and his relationship. And because the Raiders don't care about the National Football League and the other 31 owners, they could care less.
Yeah.
That's the only reason why I mentioned that. He deserves to be a head coach again. And I understand the class action suit situation. Colin Kaepernick, they settled their situation with Eric Reed. So Eric Reed was allowed essentially to come back into the National Football League and sign with the Carolina Panthers after settling whatever that settlement was. He eventually played football again and re-entered into the NFL.
Thanks for watching ESPN on YouTube. For live streaming sports and premium content, subscribe to ESPN+.